Hey, what's going on YouTube? It's CJ. I want to welcome you guys back to the channel. Before we jump into the JBJ 65-gallon update, I want to share this really cool time-lapse with you all. You know, it's interesting watching how these pieces of art are created, and definitely was a fantastic job helping me rebrand the channel and hopefully, you know, get some stickers out for you guys. So if you're interested in this type of work, I'll put the link in the description down below on who you can reach out to get one of these created for yourself. So let's go ahead and jump into episode 12 of the JBJ 65-gallon reef build. It's definitely been over a month at this point since my last proper update. So I have some random footage, you know, throughout these weeks that I'm going to share with you all, including these test results. Look at those numbers, man. I'm telling you, be careful with ammonia in a bottle, because at this point, you know, I was like, I want this tank to cycle and I don't want to have to touch it. I accidentally overdosed it, you know, around 8 parts per million ammonia. And at that point, I just had to set and wait and wait and wait for that to be converted. So eventually it ended up being converted over, you know, 0 nitrites, 0 ammonia, and nitrates sky high. So, you know, once that happens, there's no real way to export nitrates besides water changes. And that's pretty much what I've been doing over the last few weeks or so. You know, I went a week or two hands off the tank, and then I started doing water changes weekly to try to get those numbers down. Now, the interesting part, you know, there was no livestock in here, but one thing I did notice was the pod population. Pods are everywhere in the tank. So for those wondering, you know, what kind of environment you can introduce pods, or what kind of environment they can survive in or, you know, reproduce, I gotta tell you, if these things survived my tank, you probably are fine adding pods whenever you want to on your build. But even with that being said, I will be adding another batch of pods here later on after I get the tank more established. So when it comes to water changes on the system, I didn't really touch anything or look at anything or do anything, to be honest, for roughly 2.5 to 3 weeks, completely hands off. You know, meaning went to football practice, went to work, came home, and just ignored it. I knew that I was doing too much manual manipulation, meaning trying to dose ammonia, then bacteria, and trying to, you know, balance that part out, and found that I was failing miserably at it. So much so that I think I may have been responsible for some of the bacterial blooms or some of the issues I was having using those bacteria in the bottle. So, you know, I'm going to take the blame for some of it, but what I will say is that I've never experienced these issues on any previous tanks. Any tank that I've seeded with live rock or, you know, bacteria from a different system, established media, whatever the case may be, I've never experienced these types of imbalances. So the number one takeaway for me is probably never gonna use, when it comes to bacteria in a bottle, starting a tank anymore. Not because it doesn't work, but because it just didn't work for me. Maybe it's just me and my mentality on how I approached it. Maybe I did it wrong, but whatever the case may be, it gave me a result that was unfavorable, and I know how to avoid it, which is just not using it. So, you know, at the end of the day, the goal for the water changes was to correct everything after the fact, meaning once the cycle was done, once I had my 0 ammonia, my 0 nitrites, and the nitrates were the only thing left, water changes were pretty much there just so I can drop those numbers down, because it doesn't matter how good your export method is, your skimmer, your refugium, once nitrates get around 80 parts per million, you got to do water changes. So that's pretty much what I did. And this tank went through stages of blooms, you know, bacterial wise, to clear water, to blooms, to clear water, over and over and over again. And I can just tell that the tank was working itself out. So at this point, you know, the next and the last bloom I've experienced happened after I added fish to the tank. If you guys can tell, we have 3 mollies swimming around, and mollies meaning those freshwater mollies you see in Petco. That's pretty much what I got. These are brackish fish. For those that don't know, they actually can survive and live in salt water their whole life. So it wasn't a cruel thing to try. It's just a situation where these guys are great at grazing on algae. They're easy to catch and they're cheap. So as far as a fish being able to help continue, you know, feed the bacteria in my tank and to help be those testers, these guys are getting the job done great for me. So ended up adding 6 to the tank. 3 did not survive, but these 3 have been living fine over the last couple of weeks. So when it comes to diatoms and different types of algae growing in the tank, I've noticed a few different things showing up on the sand bed and on the real reef rock, from what looked like normal brown diatoms to all the way up to the point of potential brown cyanobacteria. I mean, it was really hard to identify, but as I said before, I didn't do anything. I didn't really do anything to remove it. It just kind of started going away on its own. Now, the only parts that I really noticed real algae growing was on the real live rock that I actually introduced to the system a couple of months ago. So, that makes sense. That rock probably had something on it that, was favorable for the algae. But other than that, everything was pretty much okay. So, to try to combat any potential issues on the sand bed, maybe providing some kind of food source for that bacteria or whatever was growing, it's time to siphon it. So the last water change I've done, I hit the sand bed hard. I sucked up everything I could. There was a ton of detritus. I was really surprised at how much detritus was coming out of a tank that didn't have any fish in it. It's pretty wild, but in either case, export, removing the rock that was growing the algae, cleaning that algae off, and then just putting this rock in the rear of the tank, I think is going to pretty much be the remedy. Meaning the rear of the tank that has no light in it, and hopefully will allow this rock to continue providing that bacterial source without, growing that nuisance algae on it. So we'll see what happens. Now, if there ever was a bright spot in this situation, it would have to be this Cadlights skimmer. When I put this on, I wasn't sure how it was going to perform. I've heard great things about it, but it wasn't until I had this bacterial bloom that I really seen the workhorse this thing is. Just look at the foam. Man, I'm telling you, whatever bacteria was floating around the tank, it has been getting skimmed out immediately. Meaning the cup overflows, not with water, but with just foam and just whatever was getting removed from the tank. I've emptied this thing multiple times and it's still skimming. So definitely can't recommend this skimmer enough. For anyone that has a doubt, this is pretty much the best nano skimmer I've ever had. So this is pretty much what the tank's looking like, guys. All the footage up until this point was gathered over the last month or so. So, you guys got to see the nasty, the ugly, the good, the bad, and everything in between. But now, this is what it is, guys. And I got to tell you, the tank is looking the best it has over the last month and a half. And I'm finally getting to the point to where I'm feeling that itch, that urge to get this tank out of neutral and shift it in the drive and finally continuing the build. So definitely a hell of a journey, a hell of a ride over those last 5 or 6 weeks, but I think we finally arrived. So at this point, to be honest, guys, I'm just glad to finally see shimmer in my tank again. After having terrible water quality and cloudiness and everything, you almost forget what the shimmer looks like. And I gotta tell you, it definitely is encouraging, letting me know I'm finally getting to the point where I need to be. Now, I also want to remind you guys, I've never had any cleanup crew in here. The only thing I had in here was a cleaner shrimp, which unfortunately, after everything he survived, when the tank gets to the point to where it's ready to go, he ended up not making it. It's crazy, man. RIP to Joe the cleaner shrimp. That guy lived a hard life. He definitely deserves a little moment of silence, a sign of respect. But hey, we got to move on. We got to move forward in the tank. And at this point, I'm going to start thinking about introducing some cleanup crew members. I'm not going to go and buy a pack of 60 snails and, hermit crabs and any of that stuff. I feel that you should add a cleanup crew based off the need and the demand of your tank. So I probably will go and grab a few trochus snails, maybe a few hermits, to kind of let this tank continue to mature and let those guys have plenty of food to kind of share amongst themselves and not run into that situation where you have too much cleanup crew, not enough food, they die and just end up being a nutrient source in the tank. So, but I'm just glad to see, hey, fish are living, fish are eating, tank's clear, water is clear, everything is just good to go. So when it comes to the filtration and the rear chamber, the sump area of the JBJ, haven't touched a thing back here either. These poly filter pads have been in here for the whole time, probably over a month and a half, almost 2 months at this point. And the fact that these things are only brown, meaning, then change a weird color like red or purple or whatever other colors that, indicate some kind of contaminant in the tank, makes me feel a lot more confident that I'm able to finally start adding fish. On top of that, the Mollies are doing okay, so I think we're ready to go ahead and finally pull these polyfilter pads out and move forward with naturally filtering the tank without using things like this. Now, for those that did not know, or those that may have been curious, I am running moonlights on the JBJ. I gotta tell you, it is awesome being able to enjoy your tank 24/7. You know, even when it's nighttime, instead of burning the radions and using the moonlight feature on my, expensive lights, the little LEDs that come with the Apex, 2 of them, are bright as hell, meaning you can enjoy the tank clearly at night and doesn't seem to bother the fish. It definitely is a great addition. So for those that are curious or may have been interested in moonlighting on their system, if you have an Apex, go ahead and grab the LSM module and take advantage of these things. Now, the last thing I want to update you guys on is going to be the Santa Monica Hog Algae Scrubber. For those that follow the build, you're aware I added this to the tank when I first set it up, but I've never turned it on. Meaning you don't need this until you have something to export or, a nutrient source available to even start growing the algae. I believe I'm finally getting to the point to where I can try to start breaking this sand, but I don't expect it to happen fast. I think it's going to take probably 3 or 4 weeks before I see anything showing up on it, but I will start updating you guys on it periodically, letting you know if there's any growth or if this is even going to work out at all on the JBJ. So that's pretty much going to catch you guys up on what's happened over the last few weeks. The tank is rolling, we're ready to start stocking, and I'm looking forward to the future of the JBJ. Now, there is something I want to also mention to you guys for those that did not know. Regarding the JBJ 65 challenge, I am going to go ahead and officially throw in the towel, meaning challenge is going to be canceled. Rico is declared the winner. I have my own reasons for it, but the main thing is I'm going to keep enjoying the hobby, keep updating the JBJ. Nothing changes as far as that goes, but as far as the JBJ 65 challenge, it is officially canceled. So for those that were enjoying it, hey, hopefully you guys enjoyed the 4 rounds of battling. But for me, it's time to finally just kick back and enjoy the hobby and keep doing what I do. So as always, you guys can like, comment, subscribe. You guys keep doing what y'all do. Y'all be easy and happy reefing.